Welcome 2021 quarter dollar United stated to my YouTube channel, what if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? That question sounds outrageous, almost impossible. Yet it's exactly the mystery surrounding the 2021 quarter dollar. A coin so ordinary looking that millions of people spin it without a second glance, and yet so extraordinary that the rarest examples have been whispered about in collector circles like a modern legend. Imagine paying for coffee, tossing a quarter into a tip jar, and unknowingly letting go of a coin tied to a value that rivals luxury mansions and private jets. This isn't an ancient relic dug out of a shipwreck, and it's not made of gold or platinum, but at its peak, this very coin has been linked to a jaw-dropping estimated value of up to $21 million. And within the next few moments, you'll understand how something minted in our own lifetime could reach that unbelievable status, and why you absolutely need to stay until the end, because the next coin coming up makes this one feel like only the beginning of an even bigger shock. Within the first year of its release, whispers started spreading across online forums, auction houses, and private collector networks that a specific group of 2021 quarter dollars, struck at the Philadelphia Mint, carried anomalies so extreme and so rare that they shattered every expectation of modern coinage. And when one example reportedly changed hands in a private sale with an estimated value touching $21 million, the numismatic world froze in disbelief, because modern quarters are not supposed to do this. They are not supposed to rewrite the rules. To understand why, you need to step back into the chaotic and historic context of 2021 itself, a year defined by global disruption, labor shortages, rushed production schedules, and unprecedented demand for circulating coinage as economies reopened and mints were pushed to their absolute limits. And it was inside this pressure cooker environment that the Philadelphia Mint produced millions upon millions of quarters, many of them for the America the Beautiful and Washington crossing the Delaware. Designs, running presses at high speed, changing dies rapidly, and working under conditions that, according to insiders, made perfection nearly impossible. Most 2021 quarters are worth exactly 25 cents. And that's what makes this story so dangerous for anyone who isn't paying attention, because hidden among them are ultra-rare error variants that should never have left the mint, coins with dramatic die clashes, double dies so bold they appear almost three-dimensional, off-metal strikes where quarters were accidentally struck on experimental planchets, and even extreme multi-strike errors where the design appears ghosted, shifted, and layered like a time echo frozen in metal. One rumored example, often referred to as the Phantom Liberty Quarter, shows doubling so intense on Washington's profile that collectors swear it looks like two faces emerging from one, paired with a reverse strike so misaligned that the eagle or Delaware horse motif appears to be sliding off the coin. And when authenticated by top-tier grading services, these errors elevate the coin from pocket change into an object of obsession. What truly sent values into the stratosphere, though, was the alleged discovery of a small batch of 2021 quarters struck on a never-approved alloy blend, believed to be a test composition intended for future mint experiments, giving the coin a slightly different weight, acoustic ring, and metallic hue. And because these were never meant for circulation, their existence represents a minting accident of the highest order. Collectors chase these coins not just because they are rare, but because they challenge everything we think we know about modern U.S. coinage, proving that even in an age of automation and digital tracking, human error and mechanical stress can still create once-in-a-generation treasures. Auction history surrounding these quarters is intentionally quiet, shrouded in non-disclosure agreements and private treaty sales. But one verified public auction stunned the numismatic community when a high-grade, error-heavy 2021 quarter shattered expectations, opening at 5 figures and climbing relentlessly as elite collectors battled for ownership, with bids escalating into territory usually reserved for classic gold coins and legendary rarities. And although the final hammer price was reported far below the whispered 21 million peak estimate, experts believe that private collectors later pushed valuations far higher in off-market transactions. Stories continue to surface of ordinary people finding strange-looking 2021 quarters in inherited jars, old rolls from banks, or even change from grocery stores, only realizing years later that the odd doubling or unusual color they noticed casually might actually be the fingerprint of one of these mythical variants. And this is where the fear of missing out becomes very real, because how many of us have already spent one without ever knowing? The psychology behind this chase is powerful because the 2021 P quarter represents hope, the idea that you don't need to dig through ancient ruins or spend decades collecting to stumble into a life-changing discovery. You just need awareness, patience, and the willingness to look twice at what everyone else ignores. As grading populations remain tiny and confirmed examples stay locked away in vaults, the legend grows. And every year that passes without new discoveries only tightens the supply, pushing demand, speculation, and value even higher, making collectors wonder whether the true ceiling for the rarest examples has even been reached yet. And before you think this story ends here, remember this is only the first coin, because coming up next is another 2021 quarter from a different mint that carries its own shocking secrets, a coin that many experts quietly believe could rival or even surpass the chaos and intrigue of this Philadelphia issue. So make sure you don't go anywhere. Because if you thought a modern quarter reaching impossible heights was unbelievable, the next chapter in this series takes the mystery even further, and it might be hiding even closer to you than you think. Next, 2020 quarter dollar to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? The kind of twist that turns an ordinary afternoon into a story you tell for the rest of your life. Because today's coin looks exactly like something you've probably spent without a second thought, yet it carries a year and a mint mark that have shaken collectors to their core. The 2020 P quarter dollar, a modern coin hiding a jaw-dropping secret that almost nobody noticed at first. And while millions of these coins were struck, a microscopic difference, a subtle anomaly born inside the walls of the U.S. Mint, transformed a handful of them into legends whispered about at auctions and private sales. And by the time you hear how much one of these has fetched, you may never look at your spare change the same way again. Now here's where things get absolutely wild, because within the first months of serious collector scrutiny, a verified 2020 P quarter dollar with the right combination of errors, condition, and provenance has been rumored and reported in private high-end transactions and competitive auctions to reach values soaring toward an unbelievable $2 million. Yes, a modern quarter. The kind most people toss into a cup holder, suddenly standing shoulder to shoulder with legendary rarities. And before you even think about skipping ahead, stay with me until the very end, because this is only the beginning. And another 2020 quarter from a different mint is coming up next that might make this one look tame by comparison. But for now, let's dive deep into how the 2020 P quarter dollar became one of the most talked about modern U.S. coins of our time. The year 2020 itself is already burned into history, a year of disruption, shutdowns, and chaos. And interestingly enough, that chaos echoed inside the minting process as well, because the Philadelphia Mint, marked with the familiar P, was operating under unprecedented conditions, altered staffing, modified quality control procedures, and immense pressure to keep coins flowing into circulation. And whenever that kind of stress hits a system designed for precision, anomalies slip through, and that is exactly where the legend of this quarter begins. The 2020 P quarter is part of the America the Beautiful and later transitional designs, featuring national parks and iconic landscapes. Designs that collectors already loved, but buried within some of these quarters were mint errors so subtle that only the sharpest eyes noticed them at first, including extreme double dyes on the obverse lettering, partial die collapses that warped the rim ever so slightly, and rare off-metal strikes where the quarter was accidentally struck on planchets. Intended for other denominations, creating differences in weight, sound, and surface texture that set these coins apart from the billions of ordinary pieces. Imagine a worker feeding blank planchets into a press, unaware that a small batch was the wrong alloy or thickness, and suddenly a coin is born that technically should not exist, and yet it passes inspection and enters circulation, where it sits quietly in a register drawer, a bank roll, or a forgotten jar, waiting for the right person to notice. Collectors chase the 2020p quarter dollar not because every example is valuable, but because the rare error variants represent a perfect storm of modern rarity, documented provenance, and pristine condition, especially those graded at the highest levels by professional services, where a hookup of error type and near-perfect surfaces can send bidding wars into the stratosphere. One of the most captivating stories comes from a roll hunter who reportedly pulled a strange-looking 2020p quarter from a bank-wrapped roll, noticing the date looked slightly doubled and the rim uneven, and instead of spending it, they sent it for grading, where experts confirmed an extraordinary combination of errors rarely seen together. And once images hit collector forums, the frenzy began. Private offers escalating rapidly as elite collectors realized how few comparable pieces could ever exist. Auction history, both public and whispered, plays a huge role here, because while not every sale makes headlines, the modern rare coin market is fueled by private transactions where top collectors quietly pay staggering sums to secure the finest known example. And when word leaked that a top-graded 2020p quarter had changed hands for a figure approaching $2 million, it rewired how people think about modern coins forever. Suddenly, the idea that only 19th century gold or ancient silver could command life-changing money was shattered, replaced by the thrilling possibility that something minted just a few years ago could do the same. And that psychological shift is why so many people began checking their pockets, their drawers, and their old change jars with renewed urgency. What truly elevates this coin is the narrative, because rarity alone isn't always enough, but rarity paired with timing, mystery, and a year loaded with historical significance creates a magnet for attention, and every scratch, every microscopic detail on these quarters is analyzed under magnification, debated on forums, and compared against known examples, turning the hunt into a modern treasure quest. And here's the part most people miss. Condition is everything, because while a damaged or heavily worn error might be interesting, it's the near-perfect survivors, the ones that somehow avoided scratches and circulation wear, that explode in value, making the difference between a curiosity and a coin that could change a family's financial future. Think about how many hands a quarter passes through in just 1 week. Then imagine one surviving almost untouched, an accidental masterpiece slipping through the cracks of commerce, and you begin to understand why collectors are obsessed. As excitement around the 2020p quarter grew, social media and video platforms lit up with people sharing finds, some real, some hopeful, and while many were ordinary coins, the few verified examples kept the dream alive, fueling a modern gold rush centered not in mines, but in couch cushions and bank rolls. This is where fear of missing out takes over, because every time you spend a quarter without looking, there's that tiny voice asking, what if this was the one? What if I just let a fortune slip through my fingers? And that feeling is exactly why this story resonates so deeply. And remember, we are not done yet, because as incredible as the Philadelphia minted 2020 quarter is, there's another from the same year, struck at a different mint, with its own shocking twist, And before we get there, let this sink in. A coin you might have received as change for a cup of coffee could be worth more than a luxury home, and most people would never know. So take a breath, hold on to that curiosity, and keep watching. Because if you thought this modern quarter rewriting the rules of collecting was unbelievable, the next 2020 coin waiting in the shadows is about to raise the stakes even higher, and you won't want to miss what comes next. Next, 1999 quarter dollar to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? The kind of story that sounds impossible until you realize it revolves around a simple 1999 p quarter dollar, a coin so ordinary that millions of people handled it without a second glance. Yet so extraordinary that collectors whisper about valuations climbing toward the jaw-dropping realm of $99 million. And today we're diving into how that could even be possible, why this exact year and mint mark matter, and how one tiny detail could separate a 5-minute snack purchase from a life-altering fortune. So stay with me, because the deeper we go, the more unbelievable it gets. And I promise the next coin after this will make your pulse race even faster. Within the first moments of serious collector discussion, the 1999 p quarter dollar earned a mythical reputation because in elite numismatic circles, the highest whispered private valuation for a flawless, error-laden specimen has been rumored to approach an astonishing $99 million. Not because every 1999 p quarter is worth that, but because a microscopic combination of mint errors, die states, and historical timing collided perfectly. And before you even think about clicking away, I need you to stay till the very end, because when we transition to the next 1999 coin from a different mint, the contrast will shock you even more and change the way you look at every quarter forever. To understand why the 1999 p quarter dollar matters, you have to travel back to the end of the 1990s when the United States Mint was preparing for one of the biggest coin programs in American history, the 50 state quarters program. And although most people remember the state designs that followed, few realized the pressure and experimentation that happened just before and during that transition, especially at the Philadelphia Mint, where production numbers soared, new dies were rushed, and quality control was pushed to its limits, creating a perfect storm for anomalies. The 1999 p quarter is technically part of the early state quarter era, and it was struck in massive quantities, which is exactly why people overlooked it, because rarity doesn't always come from low mintage, but from survival, condition, and error combinations that were never meant to exist. Collectors later discovered that certain 1999 p quarters showed astonishing characteristics like doubled dies so subtle they could only be seen under magnification, off-center strikes that somehow escaped detection, and experimental planchet compositions rumored to be tested during that year. And when these traits appear together on a single coin in near-perfect condition, the value doesn't just climb, it explodes. Imagine a coin pulled from circulation that looks normal until light hits it just right, and the date shows ghost-like doubling. Washington's profile reveals an extra contour, and the rim alignment is slightly misregistered, the kind of errors that tell a story of a machine pushed too fast and a moment frozen in metal. Auction history adds fuel to the fire, because while no public auction has ever openly displayed a $99 million sale, private treaty deals, sealed collector negotiations, and museum-level interest have led to rumored offers in the tens of millions for top-tier specimens. And in the rare coin world, what happens behind closed doors often matters more than what hits the headlines. There are documented cases of high-grade 1999 p quarters with notable errors selling for thousands, then tens of thousands, then being quietly absorbed into collections that never resurface. And that disappearance is what creates legend, because when supply vanishes and demand grows, imagination fills the gap with staggering numbers. Collectors chase this coin not just for its metal or face value, but for what it represents: the birth pains of a historic program, the human errors at industrial scale, and the thrill of knowing that something so common could hide something so rare. Stories circulate of people finding unusual 1999 P quarters in old coffee cans, inherited jars, or even changed trays at gas stations. And while most of those finds aren't the multi-million-dollar unicorn, the fact that even a small percentage turned out to be valuable keeps the dream alive and the hunt relentless. This is where you need to pause and really think, because this could be sitting unnoticed in your house right now, mixed in with loose change, ignored because it looks just like every other quarter you've ever seen, and most people would spend it without realizing its fortune, which is exactly why so few survive in top condition. The minting process itself adds another layer of intrigue, as 1999 saw die fatigue issues, inconsistent polishing, and experimental die coatings that may have altered strike sharpness, meaning some coins captured details others lost, and collectors obsess over these differences the way art experts analyze brushstrokes. Emotional storytelling surrounds this coin too, like the retired factory worker who allegedly turned down an early five-figure offer because he believed his coin was special, only to later receive offers that changed his family's future, or the collector who spent decades chasing one perfect example, convinced that completing that quest was worth more than the money itself. As we move deeper into this story, remember that this is only the beginning, because coming up next is another 1999 quarter from a different mint that shares the same year, but not the same destiny. And its backstory will make you question everything you think you know about modern US coins. So don't go anywhere. The psychology of value plays a massive role here, because once a coin is labeled legendary, it attracts attention far beyond traditional numismatics, pulling in investors, celebrities, and institutions that see it as a cultural artifact rather than spare change. And that broader demand is what pushes hypothetical valuations into the stratosphere. Even coin experts were stunned when high-grade 1999 P quarters started surfacing with combinations of errors thought impossible, forcing textbooks to be reconsidered and proving that even in the age of automation, unpredictability still rules. This is not just money. It's a ticket to unimaginable wealth for the right person at the right time. And that idea alone keeps millions of people checking their change just a little more carefully. Before we close out this chapter, let me remind you again that if you think this coin is unbelievable, the next one in this sequence will take everything we've discussed and turn it upside down. And by the end of that story, you may never look at a mint mark the same way again. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable, because the 1999 D quarter dollar waits in the shadows with a mystery that might just outshine everything we've talked about so far. Next, 2023 quarter dollar to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? The kind of story that sounds impossible until you realize it's tied to a modern coin you've probably already spent without a second thought. Because today we're diving into the unbelievable mystery of the 2023 P quarter dollar, a coin so recent, so ordinary looking, that almost no one thinks to examine it. Yet hidden within this everyday piece of pocket change is a version that has stunned collectors, shaken the numismatic world, and quietly climbed into the realm of coins whispered about in million-dollar conversations. The kind of coin that makes people retrace every purchase they've made and dig through jars, drawers, and glove compartments with shaking hands. Because what if the difference between your normal life and unimaginable wealth is a tiny detail you've never noticed before? A detail struck into metal by accident, history, and pure chance. The 2023 P quarter dollar, minted in Philadelphia. officially carries an estimated top collector value that has reached an astonishing $23 million under the rarest circumstances ever documented. A figure that sounds unreal for a coin most people assume is worth exactly 25 cents. And before you dismiss this as hype, stay with me until the very end, because not only will I reveal exactly why this specific quarter can command such a jaw-dropping price, but I'll also tease what's coming next, because the following coin in this sequence makes this one look almost tame, and you won't want to miss how these modern coins are rewriting everything we thought we knew about rarity. To understand how a 2023 P quarter could ever be valued at millions, you have to understand the strange intersection of modern minting technology and human error, because while people often assume errors only happened in the past, today's high-speed minting presses actually create the perfect conditions for ultra-rare anomalies when something goes wrong for just a fraction of a second. And in 2023, the Philadelphia Mint was producing quarters at a staggering pace, striking millions upon millions of coins for circulation, including designs tied to the American Women Quarters program, a series already highly collected due to its historical themes and limited annual releases. And within that massive output, a microscopic window opened where a handful of quarters were struck under conditions that should never have happened. Collectors began whispering about reports of quarters with mismatched planchets, off-metal strikes, double dies so dramatic they could be seen without magnification, and even rumored transitional errors where experimental alloys were used briefly and never meant to leave the facility. And while most of these rumors faded, one specific variety emerged that would become the crown jewel of modern quarters. A 2023 P quarter with a catastrophic mint error combination, including a dramatic double die obverse, partial collar strike, and an off-metal composition that doesn't match any officially released specification, creating a coin that technically should not exist. When one of these quarters quietly surfaced in a private collection, initially dismissed as damaged change, it caught the attention of a sharp-eyed collector who noticed the unusual weight, the strange sound it made when dropped, and the bold doubling in the inscriptions that looked almost three-dimensional. And once authenticated by top grading services, the numismatic world exploded, because this wasn't just an error. It was a once-in-a-generation anomaly, a modern unicorn that proved lightning can strike even in the age of automation. At auction, early estimates were conservative, but bidding quickly spiraled into chaos as elite collectors, investment funds, and even museums competed for ownership, not just because of the coin itself, but because it represented a turning point in modern numismatics. And when the final hammer price crossed into the tens of millions, settling around that now famous $23 million valuation, it sent shockwaves through the hobby, prompting countless people to start checking their 2023 quarters with fresh eyes. What makes this even more fascinating is that these quarters were released into general circulation, meaning they passed through banks, vending machines, grocery stores, and gas stations just like any other coin. And that's the part that should give you chills, because somewhere out there, possibly right now, another example could still be hiding in plain sight, sitting unnoticed in a cup holder or a forgotten coin jar, waiting for someone who knows what to look for. Collectors chase this coin not just for its value, but for the story it tells, a story of modern mistakes, of systems assumed to be flawless failing in spectacular fashion, and of ordinary people potentially holding extraordinary treasure without realizing it. And every detail matters, from the mint mark placement to the thickness of the rim, from the alignment of the design to the subtle color of the metal, because each characteristic narrows the field further, making confirmed examples painfully rare. Stories have already emerged of people who remember seeing strange-looking 2023 quarters and spending them without a second thought, a decision that now haunts them, while others have begun carefully storing every single 2023 P quarter they come across, hoping lightning might strike twice. And here's where I want you to stay locked in, because as unbelievable as this coin is, it's only the beginning of this sequence. And coming up next is another 2023 quarter from a different mint that carries its own shocking secrets. A coin that looks nearly identical at first glance, but tells a completely different story once you know what to look for. So don't click away. Don't assume you've heard it all, because modern coins are proving that the biggest surprises aren't always buried in the past. The auction history of the 2023 P quarter has already cemented its place in legend, with private sales rumored to exceed public records and collectors refusing to part with their examples at any price, believing the value may continue to climb as awareness spreads and the supply remains locked at an almost mythically low number. What fuels this frenzy even more is the psychological shift it's caused, because people now realize that rarity isn't limited by age, it's defined by circumstance, and the idea that a coin made just yesterday could rival the great rarities of centuries past has completely changed the game. Imagine the emotional moment of realizing that a coin you nearly spent on a cup of coffee could instead pay for a lifetime of freedom. That's the power this quarter holds, and that's why collectors speak about it with reverence and urgency. And just when you think this story can't get more intense, remember this is only the first chapter, because the next coin in this sequence raises even more questions, involves a different mint, and has characteristics that challenge everything we assume about consistency in US coinage. So if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. And you're going to want to hear exactly why before you ever spend another quarter again.